Good morning, everyone. We'll wait just another minute or two as folks join. And just so you know, we are recording this session, and the recording will be posted to the Coastal Resilience Grants website. All right, super. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. Looks like we have critical mass or so we'll get started. This webinar is an informational webinar about the 2024 New Hampshire Coastal Resilience Grants funding opportunity. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kirsten Howard. I'm the Resilience Program Coordinator for the Department of Environmental Services Coastal Program. My colleague Becca Katz is going to help us run the webinar today. And as I mentioned earlier, we're recording today, so we will post the recording of the webinar to the Coastal Resilience Grants website for future reference. If you have questions as I go, please share those in the chat, and then we'll have hopefully about 15 minutes or so at the end of the hour to go through those questions, have some discussion about the funding opportunity. Becca will keep an eye on those questions. All right, so I'll start with just a quick introduction to the DES Coastal Program. Many of you may be familiar with this, but we'll go through it real quick, and then we'll cover highlights of the Coastal Resilience funding opportunity, how to apply for the CRG funding, and how applications are evaluated. And then, as I mentioned, we'll end with some questions and discussion. So the DES Coastal Program is funded by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Office for Coastal Management under the Coastal Zone Management Act. We sit in the Water Division of the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, and our mission is to protect clean water, restore coastal habitats, and make communities more resilient to flooding and other natural hazards through funding and staff assistance to coastal towns and cities in New Hampshire and other local and regional groups. We work primarily with the 17 tidally influenced communities in New Hampshire that make up what's called our coastal zone, and those communities are depicted here on this map. And the Coastal Resilience Program, which I'll refer to as the CRG program, has been around for a number of years now, and it's shifted over time. It's funded different types of efforts throughout the coastal zone since 2014. The coastal program has funded 25 coastal resilience grants projects totaling a little over $1 million in federal grant funding and just under $500,000 in non-federal match from grantees. All past CRG projects are summarized on our website, including links to the approved contracts or scopes of work. So you're welcome to explore those there. Just a couple examples of past projects include the creation of a restoration plan for the Philbrook Pond salt marsh in Northampton, an effort to review Dover's existing climate plans to better integrate and improve equity and racial justice in their climate action planning, a project to evaluate basement flooding at the Black Heritage Trails headquarters in Portsmouth, and to help understand connections to groundwater rise due to sea level rise in that area. And then another example is an ongoing effort now to evaluate the usage and make recommendations for protecting Seabrook's dunes and dune walkways at Seabrook Beach. I'll focus now on some of the important things you need to know as you consider project ideas and prepare applications for the 2024 Coastal Resilience Grants opportunity. All of this information can also be accessed via our website. The link is included on this slide, and we'll include that. I believe Becca just posted that in the chat, so you can bookmark that website. So for the purposes of the CRG funding opportunity and program, this is our working definition of coastal resilience: the capacity of a coastal community or a coastal system to adapt in a changing climate, measured by the capacity to bounce back quickly from shocks and stresses like storms and leap forward by fostering sustained and equitable achievement of community goals and ensuring the social, economic, environmental, and cultural well-being of all peoples and habitats over the long term. The purpose of the Coastal Resilience Grant Program um, is to support projects that build capacity, advance planning, and develop designs to increase coastal resilience, including community and/or habitat resilience in one or more of the New Hampshire coastal zone communities, which are listed here, and that's 17 communities. This year, eligible applicants include coastal municipalities. They include quasi-governmental organizations, NGOs, academic institutions, and state agencies. And this is new this year. We're allowing applicants to submit more than one application from the same organization. And applicants and projects based in and composed of communities that have historically received fewer funding opportunities for coastal resilience grants specifically are encouraged, and preference will be given to lead applicant organizations that have never received a CRG award. Projects have to minimize negative impacts to environmental resources, and there will be preference given to projects that avoid negative impacts to environmental and cultural resources, and preference for projects that build coalitions, protect and sustain cultural heritage, advance environmental justice, advance inclusive access to the coast, and/or protect and restore natural and coastal resources. Um, Preference is also given to projects that collaboratively develop products and outcomes, meaning that those projects integrate inclusive, ethical, and mutually beneficial engagement and share decision-making power with those who are affected or who are intended to receive benefits from the project itself. There's much more information about these preferences in section B of the application instructions. I definitely recommend downloading the application instructions. It's a PDF, and taking a really good look at the language within that document. So as I alluded to earlier in the purpose section, we're funding 3 categories of projects in 2024. That's building capacity projects, planning projects, and design projects. Building capacity projects seek to increase the neighborhood, grassroots, or community capacity of applicants and their partners to increase resilience by building networks, increasing knowledge, and or improving access to resources such as funding. At the end of a building capacity project, the project applicant and its partners should be better positioned to engage in sustained work to increase community and or habitat resilience. And there are some examples included in the instructions of what a building capacity project looks like. That might be creating or supporting a neighborhood group. It could be implementing a resilience leadership development program, improving the intersectional network of groups working on community issues related to resilience, which can venture into public health and racial justice and affordable housing and public transportation and business continuity. So really a wide range of types of projects I think is what we're really looking for in the building capacity project type. The planning projects seek to develop plans, assessments, regulations, and/or other strategic information that will guide community and/or habitat resilience. So a planning project should result in a collaboratively developed planning product that will be used strategically to advance community and/or habitat resilience. Um, Again, some examples show up in the instructions document. I'll list a couple now. Collecting and analyzing community and/or environmental data or knowledge to inform a resilience planning effort could be a planning project. Conducting a vulnerability or a needs assessment for a site or for a neighborhood or for a community or a region. Um, Integrating state and regional best practices or guidance into local master plans or capital improvement plans or other local plans or ordinances could be a planning project. And some examples of those types of guidance are listed in the instructions, including the New Hampshire Coastal Flood Risk Guidance, which was released in 2020. A more recent form of guidance released is the New Hampshire Salt Marsh Plan. There are links to those within the instructions. Other examples could include creating a new emergency response and recovery plan or a conservation or habitat restoration plan for a site. So hopefully that gives you some idea of the types of projects in that category. And then the third category, design projects, are focused on advancing designs for a site-specific physical resource or asset that will increase community and or habitat resilience. So this should result in collaboratively developed designs for a site that can then be considered for funding opportunities that support final design, permitting, and construction. We cannot support new hardened shoreline structures such as riprap, seawalls, revetments due to the negative environmental impacts of those types of projects. But we can support designs for nature-based shoreline stabilization projects, such as living shorelines. And we can certainly chat more about what the definition of a living shoreline or a nature-based shoreline project might be in comparison to those harder shoreline structures. This is an important feature of the design projects. We can support, this funding can support up to 75% engineering designs, but can't support final engineering designs or permit any costs associated with permitting. So keep that in mind. And then again, some examples are included in the instructions. These are may include a design charrette for a vulnerable neighborhood that results in a design product, maybe a conceptual design drawing of some kind, development of conceptual design alternatives for a priority habitat restoration or nature-based infrastructure project like a tidal culvert replacement could be an eligible design project. And I'm curious and interested to chat more about other ideas in this particular category too. So again, feel free to reach out. All right, now Becca's going to take on a couple slides here.
Great. So the next portion of this is about funding. So the total anticipated funding this grant round is $100,000. The minimum grant amount will be $9,000 and the maximum grant amount is $30,000. All CRG funding is federal funding provided by the NOAA Office for Coastal Management in partnership with the NHDES Coastal Program. And then federal grant funds and match may not be used for final engineering, design, permitting, or construction costs, as Kirsten was saying, for design projects. Additionally, federal grant funds may not be used for equipment purchases that exceed $5,000. And then next is match commitment, and all this stuff about budgeting and match, etc., is all in the CRG instruction document that Kristen was mentioning before in section C. So the match for coastal resilience grants consists of the portion of project costs and value not paid with federal grant funds and can be any combination of cash and/or in-kind goods and services related to the project, such as volunteer time. So for the CRGs, a 4-to-1 federal grant funds to non-federal match through cash or in-kind services is requested but not required. In a 4-to-1 match commitment, a project seeking $20,000 in federal grant funding would provide $5,000 in non-federal match commitment for a total project budget of $25,000. Applicants may include a justification for reduced or no match commitment in cases where a reduced match commitment will eliminate any barriers to applying for CRG funding. There are additional instructions on how to calculate match included in the application instructions and a forthcoming budget guidance for the CRGs. So some project timeline information. So the project duration should be about 12 to 18 months, planning to start between November 2024 and January 2025. Just as a note, in the event that a project is not under contract or in the contracting process by January 2025, NHDES may rescind the Coastal Resilience Grant offer of funding. The project end date should be projected to be about December 2025 and at the latest June 30th, 2026. So some important dates include the office hours, which will be Wednesday, May 15th and Tuesday, May 28th from 1 to 3. We had one last week and those are our next two. And you can sign up at a link that I will be putting at the chat as well. So Friday, May 24th at 4 p.m. is the deadline for questions. So we will be posting questions and answers to the website as they come in. And that is the last date that we will accept questions that will be answered before the end of the application or be posted to the website. So Friday, May 31st at 4 p.m. is when the application itself is due via the application form, which I had posted that link in the chat, I believe, but I can do so again. And then Friday, June 28th is when the award notifications will go out. By the end of August, Friday, August 30th, the project scopes should be finalized so we can begin the governor and council approval process or just the approval process in general. And so that will hopefully be in October 24 through January 2025 for the project start. And then by June 30th, 2026, all projects should be completed. And these deadlines are repeated in the CRG instructions section F.
Super, thanks, Becca. All right, so next we're going to go into some instructions about how to apply. But maybe before I'll do that, I'll also just mention this is the first year we've offered a minimum funding amount under $10,000. If you are an entity that does not have an existing contract with the state, with the Department of Environmental Services, and you apply for a grant amount under $10,000, the contracting burden is much more minimal. We would not have to go to Governor and Council for approval. It would be an internal contract with DES. So for those who maybe are new or smaller organizations and looking for maybe a capacity building grant or just a really small grant and don't have existing contracts with DES, that might be an incentive to take note of. Okay, so how to apply. We've talked about the instructions document quite a bit. There are two kind of links or documents that are kind of important to keep in mind as you're preparing an application. One is that application document. And then the second is the application instruction document, which is the second box on this slide. And the kind of form for submitting the application is also something I think Becca can link in the chat. So you'll be working in a form, a formal kind of DES form where you have to create an account. And then you'll also be referring to this PDF application instruction and evaluation criteria document as you go. These two links will also be provided. I know we mentioned we're going to share the recording of this webinar. We'll also provide a PDF version of these slides so you can access these hyperlinks as well. As we move into, I'll demonstrate a little bit about what the form looks like and what the instructions tell you to do over the next 10 minutes or so. This is the New Hampshire Coastal Resilience Grants webpage. The 3 arrows on here mark important resources that I just mentioned, the application form and the instructions. On the bottom right, that's where we'll post the recording to the webinar. On the bottom left, you'll find answers to relevant questions submitted via email between now and the date Becca mentioned, May 24th, I believe. If you scroll further down on this website, that's where you can find the descriptions of past CRG projects and other resources that might give you ideas or context. This is the, when I click the application form link, that brings me to this page. And if I click register, I'll be prompted to create a user profile so I can log in, save my work, and submit an application. On the main form page here, be sure to read through the text. The arrow toward the top is pointing to FAQs that can help you with an account and also help you understand how to forward your work to other partner collaborators who also have accounts. So you can work on an application with multiple individuals from the same or different organizations. The second arrow on the left indicates another place you can link to the application instructions. So the instructions document looks like this. I would have that open as a separate tab to reference as you go. And then back on the form page, this is where you'd begin your application. So you'd click begin form entry, and the form is broken into 5 sections, and then a review step at the very end where you certify and submit your application. Your work will save automatically as you go in here. When you hover over the little I that appears at the top of the right corner of each of the fields where you enter text, you'll see some pop-up text shown here. That's the dark black field here with the white text. That also tells you what, if there's a character limit, what that character limit is for that section. Okay, so that's just a quick intro to the form process. Now I'll take just a little more time to provide some detail about the application sections and how we'll be evaluating responses. So eligible applications are going to be reviewed by a CRG review team, which is composed of New Hampshire Coastal Program staff and some additional partner reviewers. The applications are going to be reviewed and evaluated based on the criteria that's included in the application instructions and evaluation criteria document. And you should reference that throughout, as I've mentioned this a lot, but you should reference that throughout your application development. I'll give you a little taste of what the criteria and point values look like. There's a lot more detail in the instructions document. But just to give you a sense, a score will be given to of 2 additional points if you're a lead applicant that has not received a CRG grant in the past. So that's where that preference for an organization that has not previously been funded comes into play. There's 6 points given to the project summary section, which is section 2. In section 3, this section is kind of the meatiest section from a sort of purpose and context perspective. So total points for the project purpose and audience section, section 3 is 17. And that's 3 points for your project purpose, 4 points for your environmental context, 5 points for community collaboration and engagement section, and 5 points for a discussion of how the project advances diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and accessibility. And then section 4 is where the meat of kind of what you're actually going to do within your project and how it will be funded comes into play. So the project team work plan and budget section is worth 22 points. One thing that's new in the work plan section that is a little bit hidden in the instructions is that we're asking all applicants to include time budgeted for a meaningful engagement training activity that will enable at least one project team member from the lead applicant organization to participate in 4 hours of training that will be organized by the DES Coastal Program and scheduled for February of 2025. That's something new this year. It's a best practice we're pulling from Massachusetts Municipal Vulnerability Grants Program. And so stay tuned for that. That just means really you just have to allocate 4 hours of your budget toward participating in this training that will be provided. And then budget information is requested in that section, including a table, a budget table organized by federal budget category. Becca mentioned earlier that we will be providing some budget guidance in a document form as well that is intended to assist anyone who has not or isn't super familiar with the allocation of budget by federal budget category. So hopefully that will be a helpful resource, and we're always happy to talk through how you lay out your budget by federal budget category as well. For that, we're really just looking for an effort, and it's a table that we have to include in the governor and council approval process and the NOAA approval process. So you don't have to get it 100% right when you submit it. We just need you to take a stab at filling it out, and then we can always adjust it in negotiation if you are selected for funding. And then finally, supporting documents are worth 3 points. That's section 5. This includes letters of support, letters of collaboration, and any photos or maps or other images that you want to share as part of the context for your project. A letter of support or collaboration is not required for the lead applicant organization. There's in the certification section at the end of the application form, we're taking your certification as the lead applicant organization as your commitment to the project. However, if you do have other funded partners on your project, we would expect to see a letter of collaboration from them. And with that, I think that's really all we have for folks today in the form of kind of the formal webinar portion. So now we're happy to jump into questions and discussion about project concept ideas. And Becca, if she has not done that yet, can also share the office hours link in the chat. You can always you can sign up for formal office hours. I think it's a nice way to allocate some dedicated time to discussing a project idea. However, if those times and dates don't work for you, you can always email or call me or Becca, and we can set something up separately. All right, interested to know if anyone has questions or ideas they want to chat about with this in this venue.
If there are any questions, please feel free to either raise your hand using the function or just unmute yourself.
I don't have a question, but I just want to thank you guys for providing this information. It sounds like it'll be pretty straightforward to fill out an application. We're still talking about different ideas, so we probably will follow up with some questions later, but I just want to thank you for putting this out there.
Great, thanks, Peter.
Hi, I'm Alice Passer. I'm on the Conservation Commission in Greenland. Thank you very much for this webinar. I'm super new at all this. Just wondering whether a project to help with state requirements regarding stormwater runoff might be a good project for this application.
Would be eligible. Are you speaking specifically about MS4 permit
MS4.
requirements?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had projects in the past that are working on an aspect of MS4 compliance. And one nice thing about this NOAA funding, unlike some of the EPA funding, we are allowed to spend it on addressing stormwater compliance issues. So certainly I'd say, focus on the intersection. Stormwater management is a resilience issue, so it's a pretty easy case to make, but definitely focus on the intersection between kind of climate impacts and stormwater impacts, and how the project is going to help you address both existing permitting requirements and also future kind of community resilience needs. And I'm happy to chat more, Alice. Really happy to have you here today, and I'm happy to chat more about a project idea if you want to.
Great.
Anytime. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Kirsten. Nice to see you. Thanks for hosting this. I appreciate it. My question is, do you think any portion of these funds could be utilized to help install a living shoreline practice that has been designed?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
The reason being, once we get past sort of once we get past the 75% design stage, we start to trigger NEPA requirements because it's federal funding, and we haven't built in the time. It's doable to sort of undergo that NEPA permitting review process, but we haven't built in the time or really have the amount of funding that like makes it justifiable this year. In some past years, when we've had more funding available and a little more time to work with, we have offered active implementation restoration project concepts as eligible project types, but not this year.
Okay. How about outreach related to that living shoreline and maybe some like additional conservation practices that aren't specifically drawn out in the plan that would benefit a buffer or something?
The outreach would certainly be eligible. And actually, Alice, this may go to your question as well, depending on what types of stormwater management compliance activities you're thinking of. Anything really that touches the ground or is in the ground will trigger NEPA. So in those cases, we wouldn't be allowing those projects. Even installing signs, for example, in
or
ground.
Plants.
Yep.
Okay.
Unfortunately. Yeah. So really any outreach planning you have associated with the project, that would be totally eligible. Any planning design work in advance of actual implementation would be eligible. And what I would also say is that any implementation work you are doing around the project, you may speak to that as kind of leveraged resources associated with the effort, but we wouldn't be counting that as actual match to this grant because it would be implementation restoration work that would trigger NEPA.
Okay. Thank you.
Nuances there. I'm happy to go into more detail, and I think the main thing is to keep implementation work or in-ground work out of your applications, and if we have to noodle and finagle the match the way that that's explained, then we can do that after the fact.
I know how to do that.
I'm sure you do.
For
anyone who doesn't know how to do that. All right, Kim, go ahead.
Thank you very much. This has been very helpful. Given the storms that we've had, we just had New Hampshire DOT come to Rye, and the people weren't happy. DOT is obviously, they want transportation, and they want to protect their homes. So when this came across my email, I was very excited. Then the excitement went away when I found out that it couldn't really do construction. So, but what I was following along in the instructions page, and Kirsten, what I heard you say is an emergency response plan might be something. Do you know of any other communities who have done this?
I don't know of an emergency response and recovery plan existing, but I do know that it was a recommendation in the 2016 Coastal Risk and Hazard Commission report. Others on the call may be familiar with, there certainly are emergency plans in place, but but in terms of response and recovery specifically, I don't think a community has adopted one, at least as far as I know. And I think it would be, it would be a novel and exciting idea to move forward with.
Well, I'm excited because based upon all the other criteria, I think planning is where we could best use this grant, and that speaks volumes to me. And just want to you said no signs, right? So if we were to buy signs saying emergency exit, go here, we can't even put a sign into the ground, right? That would be at our own dime.
Right. The way we've approached that before with signage projects is that you can use the funds to buy signs, design signs, plan where they're going to go, get permissions. You just can't put them in the ground. So once the project ends, then you
Then we
go
can
and you
plant
put
them.
them in the ground.
All right. Thank
Yep.
you. This has been helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Brianna, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for doing this. So we're in Hampton still chatting about what we would like to propose, but just kind of fleshing out some ideas. And I was wondering if in some way supporting our voluntary home elevation and buyout program would be eligible, specifically if, and I have no idea what this could look like. I'm just kind of thinking generally, but specifically if those, if any funds could be given to private property owners or used on private property.
It's a great question. I think we would have to like figure out the nuances of what those funds would be supporting specifically. I do think there is some, there are certainly some aspects or eligible funding uses associated with private property, including, I believe, designs. So,
Okay.
but let's chat a little bit more about what kind of specifically you're thinking might be useful. I'd have to double check on say survey, for example,
Okay.
if that would be allowed on private property. And so I can follow up on that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we're having a meeting tomorrow morning, so if we kind of get that idea a little bit more fleshed out, then I can let you know if we have specific questions.
Cool. That sounds great.
Thank you.
Sure. And certainly outreach, the other sort of broader community efforts related to reaching private property owners. I think you probably have assumed that that's eligible, but yeah, it definitely is.
I have what is hopefully just a simple question. For building capacity projects, could that include funding of internships for summer of 2025? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, that would be the summer that that it would take place, right?
Thanks.
Mhm. Any other questions coming to mind for folks? I think we've heard from many of you. That's great. I'm excited to see that there are some ideas and that there's enthusiasm out there. So, okay, I think we can plan to wrap up. Peter, I think you're, if you wouldn't mind muting, I think we're hearing some background noise. Thanks. All right, we can wrap up now, and as we mentioned, we'll post this online along with the slides, so you can access those links if you need to. Thank you again, everybody, for joining. Thanks, Becca, for all the help, and we'll look forward to chatting more and seeing your applications. All right, bye, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks so much.